Welcome to Complinet Global Newscasts. News featured is taken from Complinet Complete, our news, analysis and tracking service, and your comprehensive view of the regulatory landscape. The US Treasury Department announced the conclusion of 3 weeks of face-to-face global engagement with governments and private sectors in Bahrain, Brazil, Ecuador, Japan, Lebanon, South Korea, Turkey and the UAE. The goal of these conversations, which were led by the Treasury Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, Stuart Levy, was to ensure that the public and private sectors in these countries fulfil their obligations to help isolate Iran. Daniel Glazer, the Treasury Department's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Terrorist Financing and Financial Crimes, told a House committee back in July that the Middle East, Asia and South America are the regions that the Treasury needs to focus on to make Iran sanctions as broad as possible. As international pressure mounts and its economic isolation increases, Iran will attempt to seek out new channels to access the international financial system for illicit purposes, Levy said when announcing Treasury's recent globetrotting. The FSA slapped a $3.5 million fine on the UK branch of Zurich Insurance for data security failings after the loss of a tape in South Africa containing details on 46,000 insurance customers. The city regulator said the fine was the highest to date handed down to a single firm for data security failings. Zurich UK, part of the Zurich Financial Services Group, did not have full control over the data being processed as part of an outsourcing agreement with its South African branch and was not aware of the tape's loss until a year later. Zurich UK let its customers down badly, Margaret Cole, the FSA's Director of Enforcement and Financial Crime, said. Firms across the financial sector would do well to look at the details of this case and learn from the mistakes that Zurich UK made. We spoke to Complinet's senior editor Alex Davidson about the FSA's fine.
At the moment, the FSA is absolutely determined to show that it's conducting business as usual despite a possible pending breakup of the authority. And one former enforcement official of the FSA actually told us that the FSA has everything to play for at the moment because the FSA's own future is uncertain, and if it performs particularly well, maybe it could influence its own future for the better.
The Studies and Economic Media Centre, a Yemeni non-governmental organisation, has launched a campaign to raise awareness of money laundering and terrorism financing issues among Yemeni banks and financial institutions. The campaign augments other initiatives aimed at improving industry expertise and implementing new AML and CFT laws. The SEMC said the campaign will last several weeks, adding that its teams had already visited several banks and exchanges to distribute brochures. The literature included updated transaction monitoring methods used to detect money laundering and terrorism financing activities, the SEMC said. And finally, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand has begun an overarching review of disclosure obligations for the country's banks, which it said would reduce the compliance burden on institutions and produce more meaningful data for the regulator. The RBNZ published a consultation paper seeking comments on the proposals to bring New Zealand's prudential reporting obligations into line with other standards, such as international financial reporting standards. This is a fundamental review that has a primary aim, the reduction of compliance costs associated with the current disclosure require, the RBNZ said. This is likely to result in a significant reduction and modification in the Reserve Bank's disclosure requirements and the introduction of other methods of collecting information for prudential purposes. To read about these or any other stories from Complinet in more depth, please log into complinet.com or contact us if you'd like a free trial. Join us next week for another newscast from the Complinet Global News team.